updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well. Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
October, day are we at? 26th? 25th, 2023 meeting of the Exeter Budget Recommendations Committee to order. My name is Bob Kelly. I'm the chair, and I'm also on the Water and Sewer and the Public Works General Subcommittee. We'll go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Christopher Zigmont, Crestview Drive, and I'm on the General Government Subcommittee.
Good evening, everyone. Corey Stevens, Finance Director.
Good morning, excuse me. Good evening, Melissa Roy, Assistant Town Manager.
Good evening, Russell Dean, Town Manager.
Good evening, Justin Pizon, Assistant Fire Chief.
Eric Wilkin, Fire Chief and Emergency Management Director.
Liz Canada, I'm on the Parks and Rec, Library, and Human Services subcommittee.
Amanda Kelly, I'm on the General DPW and partially on the Parks and Rec. Health and Human Services. And,
Darden Reeves on the Water and Sewer.
Timothy Gwynn, Highland Street, Police and Fire.
Judy Rowan, Prentice Way, and I chair the Police and Fire Subcommittee.
Anna Grazier, General Government Subcommittee.
Hi, Anthony Swan, 7 Marlborough Street, and I serve on the Water and Sewer Subcommittee.
And off mic, we have the police chief, who we will hear from later, and select board representatives Nancy Belanger and Nico Papacasadis, the chair, as well as Joanna Bartel, our record keeper. And late to the meeting.
Hey. I was going to come early. It was in my head I was going to get here early. But in my defense, I was baking cookies for the meeting, which are there and they're still warm because
That's an acceptable...
they were in the oven.
You're forgetting.
And I'm Chris Suter.
You can bring them this way, Nico.
Seriously. If you people don't eat them, I'm going to be really ticked off. You don't want to see that.
For decades, the budget book has had police before fire, which alphabetically you think it might be the other way around, but we've always gone with police first, but tonight we're going to drastically mix it up and hear from the fire department first. All right.
Why didn't we have a meeting about this?
Judy is the chair of the Police and Fire Subcommittee, along with Tim. And they will lead this portion of the meeting. So Judy and Tim, take it away.
Thank you. And this is Tim McGuinn, who's been assisting me in this committee. And tonight we have the 2 fire chiefs, Chief Wilking and Assistant Chief Pizon. To begin, just some summary remarks. Exeter is fortunate to have both its police and fire departments fully staffed, and I understand there's one position open to dispatch, but otherwise fully staffed. Given the extremely tight labor market, there is much competition for these highly skilled personnel. In light of this labor environment, the town has granted retention bonuses in both departments paid for out of ARPA funds. Going to the fire department, the nature of fire department work has changed substantially over the years. Call numbers have increased with the increase in Exeter's population and the addition of several large retirement and assisted living facilities. The ratio of fire suppression to emergency medical service, or EMS, calls has shifted such that EMS now makes up 60% of all calls and fire suppression 40%. Funds from EMS calls go into the EMS revolving fund, which covers the purchase of a new ambulance when needed, with the remainder of the money going back into the general fund. This year, EMS rates were increased with the bulk of payment coming from insurance reimbursement. We should add, rates are still lower than surrounding communities. With the increased revenue, the fire department would like to propose that EMS overtime, that is 60% of the runs, be charged to the EMS revolving fund before monies are returned to the general fund. This change would reduce the fire department overtime costs by $56,180. There would still be enough money left in the revolving fund for a new ambulance when required, and a similar contribution to the general fund as in past years. The proposed budget shows salary wage increases due to the collective bargaining agreement, or CBA. Following the retirement of Chief Wilking in April of 2024, the department would like to take advantage of his specialty knowledge in emergency management by hiring him part-time to be the emergency management director. The hydrant maintenance fee, that will be down under number 55151, is presently located in the fire department budget. Following the water rate study, the fire department line item was increased to $50,000, even though no additional departmental personnel time or material was increased. At the recommendation of the town manager and finance director, and at our last meeting, you may remember, the line item was moved to general fund miscellaneous. It remains to be determined what number amount should be in the fire department line item and what should be in the miscellaneous line. It is expected that the increased amount in the general fund will be offset as revenue in the water fund. Okay. And looking at the budget itself, I have a number of explanatory remarks on the far right column. Need to get fire instead of police.
See what we did there?
Full disclosure, I complained that we didn't go first last year. And my last year presenting to you, I said it'd be awfully nice to let fire go first. So Judy is very helpful and very nice and let us go first. So we're a little disheveled.
Okay, there are a number of incentives in both departments, and I wanted to inquire about all of them. What does this mean? And in each department, there's a salary wages incentive, and this is for specialized training. So people get specialized training, and then they come back to their departments and share that knowledge with others. So there's a little financial incentive there to do that. We have a number of overtime lines that we would like to change to reflect what I just read about the EMS revolving fund. Bob, do we want to have me move each line or and have a discussion about each line, or?
Yeah, if we are going to change the budget, we need to vote on
each one, or do
line that we change, except for
collectively?
benefits. But if it's a salary item or overtime or anything like that, yeah, we can vote on each individual line.
So in line item 51150, vacation replacement overtime, this is one of those that the department would like to have have 60% of the overtime be taken out of the revolving fund. So I will move a change in that figure to $11,669.
Could you repeat the line, the object number again?
51150, vacation replacement overtime.
And that number you're proposing?
We'll second it.
It is 11,669.
Corey has an interjection here.
Can I ask that I give the numbers that you're going to change, and then we can talk about how they may differ? I just want to make sure that what I have here, which I believe we've worked between departments to get right, are the numbers that we're voting on. Or you're
Excellent.
voting. Okay.
Okay, so take it away.
Okay.
Before we do we understand? I think Judy did a great job summarizing the thought process. Do you understand what we're doing, or?
No.
No? Okay,
Not at all.
well,
I don't either.
I was just asking Liz, when do I get to ask what all these things
there
are?
you go.
Okay.
So let me just back to that. First, I want to say, It has been a true pleasure working with all of the boards, volunteer and not, in the town of Exeter for nearly the last 20 years. And sadly, this is very likely going to be my last presentation before you as the budget recommendation for as your town's fire chief. And wherever we go with a successor fire chief or someone else, I wish them all the best. And I think we positioned the fire department and the budget in a way that it is very solid and moving the ball forward in a positive manner. But thank you so much. Some of the faces I have seen here for years and years, and yes, Bob, years. Others have moved on to the select board, others have moved on to other committees, but it has been a true pleasure. It's working with you, the respect that you've shown us, and hopefully we have shown you, has really been a breath of fresh air. So let's back up the bus just for a second. And Judy and Tim were at a subcommittee meeting. I met with Russ and Melissa, or Town Manager Dean, and Assistant Town Manager Roy over a month ago, and proposed a change in the thought process for kind of working with overtime. We deal with data and statistics regularly, and over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a trend, as with most departments, that EMS has taken the lead on our response. This should be no surprise. We are an aging community. And for the last 3 years, we're within 1 percentage point of 60% EMS. And in a year that we all recognize the budget is extremely high, it's a higher percentage than we've normally seen increases in the budget. We're looking for ways to creatively finance what we need for funds to run the fire department. And as Judy mentioned, the select board approved a rate increase in February of 23 that we sent down to Comstar, our third-party biller, and Medicaid. Medicare is reimbursing us at a higher rate. We were just notified about a month ago that Anthem Blue Cross in the state of Hampshire are going to raise their rates, and that is a substantial rate increase as well that we haven't even seen yet. So these are funds that we will bill in the future and receive. So putting all that in perspective, we said, what if we said, over time, to maintain the same shift strength we have, with not seeking any additional personnel, no additional coverage, by collective bargaining agreement, the firefighters, we maintain a minimum staffing of 5. The town has approved 7 personnel on duty, so when we're fully staffed, we run with 7, but due to sickness or vacations or military deployments, we drop to 5. So the numbers in the budget reflect no change in the level of service provided. It just reflects a difference in thought process, that if we took the same number and split it 60-40 between EMS and fire, and let the ratepayers, let the users of the ambulance bear the burden of a significant amount of the overtime that the town pays to maintain the shift, would it be a good thing? And when we looked at it, we said that because of the rate increases, we can pay that kind of money and not change what the town is receiving in at the end of the year when Corey does his magic and shifts in money from ambulance to the general fund to offset taxes, to help the taxpayer. So using that, we proposed with Judy the numbers that you're going to hear from Corey. We've significantly reduced the general fund requirement on overtime in 3 lines: vacation, sick, and personal time. Shifted those dollars to the ambulance revolving fund that the select board will review and approve. And then, well, that's presumptuous, is it not? Hopefully approved. And then, of course, with that, the associated taxes and benefits. So, so we all know the retirement system has a pretty significant percentage of wage matching at about 30%. So the number Judy gave you of 56,000 is an amalgam of 3 overtime lanes and the associated benefits that can be saved if we agree that this is a good thought process moving forward. Reduce the general fund and put the burden, or much of the burden, on the back of the ambulance revolving fund.
Okay, and this has been vetted by you guys, presumably?
Yeah, we have vetted it, and it's supported.
Okay, Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, a thought about this and just a reaction to it. When I was reviewing these numbers and I saw, before I knew about this particular proposal, and I saw the amount of EMS and sort of intuited the workload of the EMS and the revolving fund and what have you, and as I was reviewing the numbers, I'm going to skip ahead here. I was looking at dispatch, and I saw 5 full-time staff members in dispatch. And I'm thinking to myself, well, those people are answering the phone calls for EMS calls as well, aren't they? And so before I knew about your proposal, I was thinking, well, geez, maybe we could justify, because I saw in your notes somewhere that one person is covered in the EMS revolving fund, correct?
Correct.
And I was thinking to myself, just in pure numbers, that maybe it might make sense to actually have 2 dispatch people paid for by the EMS revolving fund. So that was one thought I had, and don't answer this, but I'm curious whether or not that was considered. So I'll just sort of throw that out as an alternative view on it. Now, the other reaction that I have now to this proposal, which I'm cold to this, so I'm just coming to this, and I understand you've all vetted it, and I'll roll with it. But if you reduce the numbers on the spreadsheet that we have before us, of course, we love to see the numbers reduced, okay? That's fine. We're on the budget committee. We like to see lower numbers. But if they don't accurately reflect the actual overtime that is happening, because it's been lowered by the EMS revolving fund, we're not really getting an accurate measure of, at least from a budgetary spreadsheet point of view, we're not getting an accurate measure, and neither is then the select board and the average person that's not integrating all of this, of how much we're really spending on overtime and sick and vacation. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I see that as I love tapping into the EMS revolving fund. I'm all for it because I thought about doing the same thing. And I'm not even an accountant, but from an accounting and numbers and budgetary point of view, I have a problem with this. But as long as it's somehow accounted for in a very transparent way, I just caution you all about that. Just a thought, just a reaction to what I'm seeing.
So it might be in the future that we would have vacation replacement overtime, and there might be 2 figures in that space.
Or a note to the effect of the offsets, for example.
Payroll tracks currently every use of everything. So Corey does it bi-weekly, and Russ and I communicate quarterly on our leave report. So Russ sees the influx, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, where we are. So as a department manager, I communicate with the town manager every 3 months on where we are, and Corey has real data numbers. It's going to be the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, again, you asked to do numbers. It's the same object to origin, the 5-digit number. Object code in both lines. So one could easily take 51150 from suppression and the 51150 in ambulance and just work the numbers. So,
and maybe there is no problem here. Maybe I'm perceiving it a problem. It's not a problem, but
for all of us non-accountants, I guess my question would, what are you worried exactly?
What I'm getting at is that as a budget committee, we do pay some attention to overtime and things of that nature. So, because ultimately it ends up driving decisions about staffing and the like. And so if I'm just throwing out there the consideration that if we're seeing a number on our spreadsheet next year that's lower than it actually is because it's been offset by the EMS revolving fund, look, maybe it's not a problem. I
know the EMS fund already carries an overtime line in it. So there is already EMS overtime in that fund. The fund report is a transparent report. We can print it out for anybody. They can see it. We use it as a regular part, as the chief alluded to, we use it as a regular part of our accounting and overtime analysis and so forth. So we do have all of those tools.
I'm obviously not against tapping into the EMS revolving fund, and I'm just saying let's do it in a most transparent sort of way. At the very least, with notes in the on the right-hand side of
But you're right, Ton, and that is one of the areas, as the department members know, that we look at very carefully each year. What is the overtime situation?
Because we've used those numbers to drive decisions about whether to approve an additional position or something like that.
Well, presumably they'll be accounted for whether they're in the fund or not.
The EMS
so.
budget is as detailed as this, line by line, so you can pull
It doesn't
out.
just go away.
But we don't review it.
No, you do not.
Well, you can ask for it if it gets to that point and the departments, are suggesting staff, then it was a simple request. We'd like a layout of the overtime over blah, blah, blah. The numbers will still be there, they're just accounted for a different way.
Okay, Mr. Chair. As always, I'm stating the obvious, I guess.
Not this time, actually. I don't think so.
I
will argue with you on that one. No, I agree with Tawny. I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, if it makes it look like there's less overtime being spent, it's not good if the fire department's coming in to say we would like to hire somebody else. So I think any way that you could put some sort of note in there showing the offset in our budget. I know it's accounted for, obviously it's accounted for. And, but if we don't see it, at first glance, it's not gonna look accurate. So as long as there's some sort of note in there, I think that's great. And I just wanna make sure I understand. So basically it's just some of the money that would have gone back into the general fund is simply being used as the offset.
I would say that, yes. We establish a budget for the ambulance that pays for all of our durables, oxygen, tools, equipment, the lease on the ambulance, and as was pointed out by Dr. Juan, the one dispatcher and all associated benefits of that position. All overtime to backfill the fire station if we're on multiple calls associated with the ambulance is already in there, as well as overtime to pay for licensing and certification requirements. So it's a significant budget already for that. And so this extra $56,000 would be burdened on them, and instead of, I suppose, to your point, returning to the taxpayer.
And it's
we
only
anticipate, I'm sorry, Corey, we anticipate a significant number.
It's only a detriment to the turn back from EMS to general fund if revenues don't also follow, which we think is
That's okay. Which gets to my question.
Chris?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, that's a great point, and actually, and again, I have to trust in the vetting that happened over here, and so my questions are pretty rudimentary. One, I have two. One is, how does this affect future acquisition of ambulance needs? CIPs are always tough. Cost of those things seem to go up. They seem to outrun inflation and things like that. So I'm just wondering how we've futured the impact there. And then the other question I have, which is somewhat related, is how undoable is this or reversible is this if we get a couple budget years into this and you go, you know what, that didn't really work out. What are the impacts? Have we looked at the impacts of reversing this?
I did not look at reversing it because I do not believe on the trending of the ambulance. Corey would be better suited to answer your question on the strength, if you will, of the ambulance fund. It is fairly solvent, and I know historically we've been able to move 5%. So let's just talk about it. We bill, and I'm going to throw a number out and say revenue comes in at $800,000 plus or minus. Ambulance costs us $500,000 to run it. The lease of a new ambulance and everything else. So there's a $300,000 difference between revenue we received and funds going out, of which 5% goes in to help the funds stay robust, and the balance of that goes over to help the taxpayer and reduce taxes. This year, we're seeing a significant increase in that split. Our revenue has climbed while our expenses have remained fairly static, and that's why we felt it was prudent to help lessen the general fund taxpayer rate by taking a little more out of the ambulance fund. We still anticipate, and that will bear out the next year or two, are those funds level funded to that? Is the town still going to receive the same amount that they've been able to use to offset tax year after year? And those are decisions that can be made down the road, but anything's redoable, anything's fixable. I'm just not sure we'll have the same conversation 3 years from now. I won't have any conversation. I'm not sure the fire chief will have the same I need to raise overtime by $30,000 because it didn't work in the ambulance. I think it's going to be a far different discussion raising general fund taxes, then it would be doing the opposite, offering some cuts.
We will still be able to support buying an ambulance out of the ambulance fund. Okay. That's a basic answer. As far as looking at the impacts, I think what we could do is analyze it on an annual basis and re-look at it and make sure that the trends are what we think they are. And if they change, we would bring that back through the budget process and have another conversation with the group about it.
Okay, great.
Okay, so could we leave it to you, Russ, and Corey, and the chiefs to figure out how to report that overtime situation in our budget so we can see the large and the small versions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. So any other questions? So Corey, if you could, we'll go down the list, I guess, starting with vacation replacement, OT 51150, and go from there.
Yep. Vacation replacement, as is in Judy's report, 11,669, 11669.
And I'd like to move that number.
Second.
Discussion. For discussion, Tom?
I'd like to ask that a note be placed on all future budgets with the actual total amount.
I got that note, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, we can add a note into the notes section showing the same object code in EMS and what that number is. That's not a big deal.
I know it's not my motion, but I'm just sort of on a...
Well, that's discussion. That's perfectly reasonable. We wouldn't have to move that question anyway, so. Any other discussion? All those in favor of adjusting the line 51150 to $11,669 signify by saying aye, excuse me.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's a vote. So personal replacement OT?
Personal replacement.
8,569, 8569.
I'd like to move that number.
Second. Discussion?
I'm writing slowly tonight, sorry. Discussion?
So I'm your wingman.
Go for it. Do you have any discussion? Or are you just...
No, I'm good.
Thank you. All those in favor of adjusting the budget for line 51130 to $8,569 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Sick replacement?
Sick replacement.
15,291, 15291.
I'd like to move that number.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of adjusting the sick replacement OT to $15,291 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And so what would be the new salaries total there, Corey?
Yes. 2,494,451. 2,494,451.
Thank you. And could you proceed down to the health insurance adjustments?
Yes. Health insurance, 592,160, 592,160.
Dental?
43,068, 43,068.
And life and long-term disability?
3,029, 3029 for life. Long-term disability, 959.
Thank you. And the benefits total then would be?
A couple more lines with these guys.
Okay.
So 52210 Medicare.
Okay.
36,170, 36170.
Okay.
And then finally 52320 Retirement Fire. 736,009, 736,009.
Okay.
Total benefits, $1,423,400, 1,423,400.
Thank you.
We should move some more money around. What else we got?
Bigger lines to write in.
I know. Okay, Judy, you want to proceed ahead with the rest of the budget items that you have?
Okay, you see an increase in command supplies, and what that has to do with is there's a cycle of federally required emergency training, and this year coming up will be the year for a training session. That is 55041. And 55042, the EMS portion of this amount is fully spent, and the rest is for a new radio that's just received. Oh, this was that item, Bob, that you had questioned about, the accounting. It's gone back and forth, two different levels, and I checked with Corey, and there are two items that make up this particular line item, and the EMS portion has been sent, and the radio just received. So we expect a similar level for next year.
Okay. Could you, I know we just started the community relations thing with the consultant that was working with the police department the year before, and we started it up with the fire department last year. Could you just expound on how the year has been going so far with that program?
I think it's been going extremely well. I know, and for this I have to thank Chief Poulin. When we started, and you heard this last year, we reached out to Jason Schreiber. Many of you know Jason as a writer for the Union Leader and the Seacoast Media Group and whatnot, and he retired, and he has been doing our posts, keeping our fire department out in the public's eye. He posts all kinds of informational pieces, whether it's hurricane season, whether it's the Seabrook drill, some non-flashy things. But I think from what he gives us and what the dedication he's shown us, being, for instance, following us to the fire in Stratham last weekend and being there when the first new companies went in. And unfortunately, the Stratham Fire Department didn't respond as quickly as one might have wanted, and much to the surprise of the homeowner standing in the front yard, the very first piece of equipment pulling in the driveway was the Exeter aerial ladder truck pulling in with nobody else there. And Jason was right there with them, kind of showing that. Not to take pictures to show up Stratham or to rub their nose in it or make them feel like they weren't performing adequately, but to demonstrate that we were there helping and whatnot. So I think he's done a great job in a year where we want to continue to keep the fire department and the police department in the public, in front of the public, and showing what we do. I think it's going to be important to continue this relationship, certainly while we look to gain support for a seemingly expensive building project, and show how we use the money, what we do, the important jobs that we do.
Great. Thank you. Con?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've been fairly public in saying that I'm not a fan of this line item. Wasn't last year. I have, I don't spend my life on Facebook, but I noodle around. In particular, trying to follow town departments and town affairs in that regard. So I have my favorite musicians, but I also follow town departments. And I just haven't seen it. Now, I know social media is weird that way, so maybe I'm just not in their feed or something like that. So I'm skeptical about them, and I would let me put it this way. I wouldn't mind seeing metrics about it, because I'm skeptical about it. And regardless, I'm not a fan of this particular line item in the fire department. No disrespect to Mr. Schreiber or to the department. I just, as a budget committee, we're looking for places to control the budget. Just this one does not strike me as necessary. It's a personal opinion. I'm just sharing it. The other thing is, I would say, and I've cautioned before, I cautioned the police chief about this 2 years ago, and I'm sure I cautioned you about it last year. Don't use this line. I'm going to react actually to the chair on this. Don't use this item for electioneering purposes.
Because you can't do that. So.
And I'm just saying publicly what we all know. But it's just. We're all hoping for a good outcome and the best police and fire services. I'm just stating an opinion more than anything, and my opinion is I don't like this line.
Can I ask? I want to make sure. Can I ask you what algorithm? So first of all, Facebook uses algorithms. So if you're not actively clicking on our fire department page, and maybe even manually the first couple times, you're not going to see it.
Right.
But can I ask what kind of metrics would you be looking for that?
Well, at one point last year, I did see, I think from the police department, some metrics relative to how many people had popped on the Facebook pages. Yeah. And so, I don't want to create work or anything like that, but I just personally, I need to be convinced. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. And as a matter of fact, if a person such as myself, who's very interested in town affairs, is not seeing it, then there are other people who are not seeing it. So then I'm questioning how effective it is as well. So anyway, I don't want to waste too much more time on it.
No, but we can get that. That's information that we can obtain, and that comes right directly from Facebook. Gives you metrics on like how many hits you've gotten and views and certain things. So.
Thank you.
Tim? Yep, the metrics would be great, but I just wanted to provide another perspective. I've been following the police department since before I was on the budget recommendations committee. I didn't know the fire department had a page, but I started following it, and I'm seeing a ton of things on my feed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people interact. What's that?
I think Tom was just blocked. If you guys unblock him,
What was this?
a little bit, just so you can get a few hits.
I see a lot of interactions.
Tom.
Going on the walk.
Does that content live anywhere else, or is it is Facebook the repository for that information, those posts?
Who's talking to you?
Yeah,
Because I have no clue.
It all depends on what we're posting. There are some things that may have been taken from someplace else, so like it's being pulled and kept the original content in another location. But most of what Jason does is new content that he develops for us. So
For Facebook?
yeah, so he does Instagram. I'm not on Instagram, so there's a lot of stuff I don't see as well, just so you know. So because if you're not on Facebook clicking on this stuff, you just don't see it. But most of that is original content of ours.
I guess my feeling, since I use Facebook and I'm forced to use social media for marketing my own business, I don't like creating content that lives on one of these services, and I feel like it might be more useful if it were on a static town webpage or blog, or just dual post in two places, so that it can be viewed by people who perhaps are not on Facebook, or someone maybe from the media who wants to go and just read chronologically. That might be a useful, in the future, looking back, that might be something that we would find useful.
Yeah, I'll speak to Bob Lowacki about it, because he'd be the person I want to ask, and I'm sure there's something we can probably do to mirror the information in two spots or somehow. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you.
I don't think Facebook should own the information.
Yeah, I'm not a website. I'm not great with that. So, but we have people that can do that, and I'll definitely ask about it and see what we can do. Sure.
So, forgive me for being new to this budget. Do we have community relations for the town? Or is it just in this fire department budget?
To the police as well.
Started with the police.
So we, this year, just as part of the reclassification, Bob Lowacki his position has changed a little bit, and so he is the media and EXTV coordinator.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's a new title, so I forget. He does all the rest of the town in collaboration with the various departments. So, for example, Park and Rec has been doing their own media and stuff for a long time, but he'll work with them. Tricia from DPW does a lot of DPW media and communication. Bob will help the departments that don't have that support. I actually had a meeting with Bob today, and just to answer your question, we actually had the exact discussion about mirroring what was happening for police and fire because of the quality of the content and getting it. So I can answer that for Bob, and that we would very much like to post that in somewhere else. But Bob is sort of servicing the rest of the town. Police and fire have Jason at this moment.
Why is that? Why do police and fire have it separately?
Well, I guess I could say that is how it started.
They were early adopters.
Yeah, so was that 2 years ago?
Correct. 2 years ago. Police last year for 5
Yeah,
years.
so it's sort of all being evaluated and reviewed. Bob just got this position just changed in July, so I don't know that we have quite enough information to look at if we need to change something. I think we need just a little bit more time, but it can certainly be a discussion down the line. I will say, like the chiefs have spoken about, whether you like the concept or not, Jason, like they said, will drive to Stratham depending on the time of day and night. And so the access that Jason and the time and the hours that he does are a little different than Bob, who works sort of 8 to 4:30. So it is a little different. Just to be honest. So,
just my gut feeling is like, I feel like I'd be more comfortable. It just feels a little strange to have the two departments have their own community relations person. And I think I would feel more comfortable if the town had it and Bob had this guy working with him or whatever, but it was a town budget and not two departments having their own separate dedicated people. It just feels kind of weird to me.
Russ?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that because of the nature of the work involved, I just wanted to remind everybody that the chiefs have the final say as to what is published. So that is.
We talked about that last year.
A key point.
Yeah, we did talk about that, Amanda.
And I have to say, I don't think Bob does not have the capacity to handle police and fire with the amount of posts that Jason does with us on a weekly basis. There's just no way. And on top of the multiple weekly posts he does for both agencies, he's also writing press releases and other items that are relevant to the public that aren't just about us, but we have news stations call, and those are, you want somebody professionally to write. Jason is a very articulate writer, and I think I value what he brings to us. He's brought a lot of exposure. People still don't know what we do. And I think this has been a great way to get out to the public what the fire department and police department does. And I think, not to throw Tim under the bus, but when he was down with us and for the subcommittee meeting, at the end of it, he said, geez, I didn't realize how much you guys do. And that's what we hear on a pretty regular basis. So this is an opportunity for us to, especially the budget committees and select boards and being out in public facing, that what do you guys do exactly? And this is really a real opportunity for people to understand what our business is. And it's multifaceted. We're an all hazards organization. So when you see some of the things you do, people are kind of like, wow, I didn't realize you did that. So, and I think he does a great job. So.
Go ahead.
I think that's absolutely true, but I think that's true of every department we have.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think DPW, the same thing. We should know a lot more about. I mean, we have a communications committee out there for the purpose the select board, created for the purpose of trying to get more communication about all town things. I don't think it's a problem specific to you as the police or fire that there's not enough awareness and communication. And if he's doing this amazing job, I think every department should have that amazing job being done.
So, Amanda, are you asking, should the Jason Schreiber, do it for the whole town? Is that what you're asking?
I think, I don't think that I would place any one department, if Bob doesn't have time to do it, and I'm just really spitballing here. If Bob specifically, as him as an individual doesn't have time to do it, could not his department, aren't there other people that work with him, could not Jason work with that department and do this for everyone equally, every department equally.
So I'll speak for, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, we've had that conversation in the past already, and Jason actually gave a proposal to do more work with more town departments. It just hasn't found its way into the budget yet while we're going through this transition phase. But it's definitely something that is in the offing and probably will come back at a later time.
But if Jason's getting $10,000 to do this right now, I feel like that $10,000 should be equal throughout all the departments and not focused on two departments.
Well, DPW has the hidden advantage. They have a person out there that
does a great job
to be good at that. And police and fire, for a variety of reasons, weren't providing that, and so we thought 2 years ago it was an experiment, and that's really what it is. An experiment.
But that's not the
to
only
try to get more information out there at the without hiring more town staff. Again, I think DPW is a singular situation because there's a person who's taken that role on. But going forward, and depending on what that role becomes, they may be brought into the fold. But those are the big departments that have fast-moving issues, water breaks, fire call-outs, but police, situations that would be applicable to this. So I think we're just experimenting, really.
Bob, if I may, in terms of the history, I think the police department started with this as part of their community outreach, as part of their community policing model, trying to get out into the community to establish those relationships so that they get the good information, so that they have connections when they're wanting to investigate a crime or prevent a crime, perhaps. But as part of the community policing model, and I think Chief Pullen got on that right away with outreach to the community in a number of different ways, and this was one of them, if that's correct.
Mr. Chair?
Chris?
Yeah, I'd like to say, and I reiterate what I said last year in the same meeting, I'm fully supportive of it. Having another year of watching it in my day job is in PR and marketing, and I think it shows an exemplary use of what social media could be and a great way to use that tool in a very positive way. So my hat's off to both departments for doing a great job with it. It's not the entire communication toolbox. It's one tool in the toolbox, and we are crawling before we walk, and I don't disagree that more departments should come on board with better public relations, community relations, and more outward-facing communication. But I think, reflecting back on the last two budget cycles, it was quite a bit to get to here. And in my view, it's a successful experiment, and I'd love to see it continue, and I would love to see it blossom. Spending a little time on the communication committee, and just listening and learning how much Bob's taking on. I also think there's probably no guy more capable of taking it on. He's fantastic, and I think you're going to really be surprised in the next year, through this next cycle, how much that department succeeds and produces. So, I just like to give my full-throated support to this continuing.
And I think the other thing is that, thank you, Chris, is that this sort of started, these programs started in the absence of Bob Glowacki being in that position. That just happened quite recently, or this year. So, again, it is a walk before we run, and in the next couple of years, it may end up consolidating. But I think we're still in that sort of information gathering stage, and it may evolve, and it may not.
I think it would be good to see metrics maybe for next year to talk about it in more detail in terms of the interactions on Facebook. And
I would agree.
Number of followers.
Chris?
I think it's also good to note too that there is other communication coming out of town. I get stuff from Parks and Rec, they send their emails out, and from DPW. So, with that, and if I really something else I need to know, I can find out. But I think the highlights, if you want to get the information, we're getting it.
Any chance to see Maple in my feed when all the rest of the work's going on? Just my, there you go.
Oh, what a girl.
Proceed.
We see a considerable increase in 55058 contract services. And this is simply due to an increase in the contract cost. This is shared cost between the police and fire department for contracted IT support for public safety conflicts. And down to 55123, fire prevention supplies. This is actually a group of classes to maintain fire inspection certification.
Done?
And,
Hold up, Judy.
sorry.
Before you go too much further, did we just talk about 55106, general equipment purchase? Or not?
No.
We sort of went over it, but if you have.
We went past it. Is that just a standard line item for the things that the department needs, Chief?
It buys big ticket and little stuff, saws, fans, and big things.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So,
Are you gonna just, I just wanna make sure when we pass the baton, are you gonna speak more on the contract service side of the house, or do you wanna have a seat at the table and chat through that since it affects both of us? Do you have questions on the contract service side? Yes. If the increase is without question, then let's just move it on. Moving on.
Really?
But if you do, when we did this, and I'll term it an experiment 3 or 4 years ago, we had a 5-year contract with a company called CCS, or Certified Computer Solutions. And in that fee that they charged, it's all inclusive. It is all of the labor, it is all of the updates, it is all of the hardware both the fire and police department use. So every terminal, every laptop is on a regular replacement schedule for that fee. One thing that did not get attached to it until the young lady brought it to our attention at our meeting before this budget was there was an anticipation that we were going to purchase and upgrade the server for the police department, about $8,500. They gave us a loaner server with the expectation that we were going to budget the server. So year 1 went great, this is perfect, year 2, perfect, year 3 comes along, and Katie kind of said, where are we with the server? And because it was Andy at the time and now Steve Bailey, when we approached Steve and Andy and said, they want $8,500 for the hard server and the migration of data, and Steve says, oh my God, that's a steal, just do it. That money is in the budget to kind of do our part of our agreement when we did this, that we would purchase the server and migrate all the data from the existing loaner server, because the police department server died. So we've been working on a loaner for 2 years. So there is a bit of an increase, but it's to play catch up on the server. That we didn't buy one terminal each, maybe one additional computer in each of our organizations. There weren't a lot of additional hardware pieces, but the bulk of that increase is not due to, they're not making more money, they're not charging more, they just asking for that server to be amortized over the final 1.5 or 2 years of a budget. So I just wanted it out there.
So has that been paid for yet?
No, because we wanted to do it this fall, but since it was such a large expense, the thought was we didn't want to commit the taxpayers and you to a purchase in September that we were going to be paying it in '24. So if it's approved, if it makes it through this committee and the select board approve it, we may seek that server in January, February, so we can kind of get the ball rolling. But this is $8,500 that we didn't want to buy and then have one of the boards not approve that increase.
And this would be line item 55058, contract services?
If that's the $17,000 or $21,000 budget.
Yes.
So the server is included.
Yeah.
So you'll see a comparable number to that. I can't swear that it is absolutely 21,318 in the PD budget, but you'll see a number.
I see, because you're splitting it.
We split it 50-50 because our terminals, our hardware, our employees are virtually identical. So we just split that fee.
Got it.
Any other questions on contract services? So on the equipment purchase, what's is the year-to-date that 10,000?
Year-to-date, we have 4,000 left, because I know Bob Kelly. I know Bob Kelly.
He didn't say no in love.
No, you've done it.
He needs to say no in love.
27,000 spent and another 13,500 encumbered. So
Okay.
I show our balance 2 days ago, $4,500. So, and most of that is we've got earmarked. But it's an interesting thing when you have to do with municipal finance. It's an art in itself. When you have to wait till town meeting in March.
Right.
We don't send tax bills till June. There's a buying frenzy, and then I purposely have a lull. I try to stop in September, October, and kind of watch. And then there's another buying frenzy at the end of the year to try to get things cleaned up. So it's a fun process. I'll miss it like a toothache.
Well, the history does show that you fully expend that line and you don't overspend it.
Wow.
So the budgeting has been very
Creative finance.
good. And it's been fairly consistent, a $45,000 budget for quite a long time.
Okay,
Judy?
can we move along now to the excitement of 55151, maintenance?
Waiting all night for this.
Has everyone been able to pick up the handout, blue handout here? If they haven't, I would ask that you do that. I'm going to segue out from Judy for a minute.
I have everything on my computer.
Well, we did buy that color copier a few
Yeah.
years
Which
ago,
one
so we got
Works
these.
great.
Which handout?
Liz, could you?
So we, in my role on the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, we worked with Public Works and the town administration to contract with Underwood Engineers this past summer to revise the rates for our water and sewer usage. And included in this is what you see in 55151, euphemistically called a hydrant maintenance fee. In actuality, it's a fire system management fee. This handout describes some bullet points that as to what this exactly is. And just to sort of boil it down to simple terms, if the town just provided domestic water to the various users in town, we probably have on the average of 4 to 6 inch diameter pipes. Because we're providing fire flows, not only to sprinkler systems and standpipes within the businesses downtown, but also to fire hydrants throughout town, the water distribution piping is actually more in the 8 to 12 inch diameter range. And that is, again, the cost of putting in those larger pipes, larger pumps, making of the additional water to provide basically standby water for fire protection is the delta that goes into this. And as the handout describes, fire protection does benefit the entire town, even if they're not on the water system. Obviously, the fire department has to fill their pumpers up with somewhere, and that's with fire hydrants, which are right now paid for primarily by the water users, which are about 60% of the total tax base. So from my perspective on this, and I think everybody who was on this review committee, 40% of the town is getting a pretty free deal with regards to fire protection services and the ability to have fire engines show up at their door and put out fires, even if they don't have pipes in front of their house, because they've filled up at fire hydrants in other parts of town. So as you can see here, let's say the fourth bullet down, the actual cost of this from the American Water Works Association can range from 5% of your total budget to 40% for very small systems. The second page is a curve that's been taken out of the actual rate study analysis and basically describes where we are on this AWWA curve. And by using that information, what we should be allocating instead of the $20,000 that has been used, basically since the early 2000s, that's as far back as I could go, it should be $750,000 based on the AWWA analysis. Now, having said that, this is just a curve based on some very generalized criteria, but it's suffice it to say that it should be a lot more than $20,000. And so what the consultant recommended was to start at $100,000 instead of the current 20, but not 750. Then to go up $50,000 a year for the foreseeable future until we felt comfortable that there was an equalizing of the value that the water users are getting and what would be paid for by the general fund. Obviously, there's a little double counting in there because most everybody who pays taxes, is also on the water system. So it's just a way to equalize the accounting, if you will. So as we discussed briefly on Friday, and Judy had articulated early in this meeting, the chiefs brought up a very good point that they don't necessarily provide a service for this. So for this number to go up in their budget is somewhat unfair to the fire department. So, which is perfectly reasonable.
We agree.
It's a certain, again, it's in there just because of the word hydrant, realistically. But in reality, the Public Works Department manages all of that. And the water users over the decades have funded the facilities that actually go to provide those services. So during the initial scrub of the budget, this number was reduced from the $100,000 that the consultant recommended in August or so to $50,000 as a way to just make the budget more palatable in the face of wage increases and other things. On behalf of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, we looked at this and we recommended fully agreeing with the consultant at $100,000. It's a tough Band-Aid to pull off, going from 20 to 100. And Russ and Corey and I have talked, we would over the next year or so try to dive down into this AWWA curve a little bit more and see where Exeter actually sits on that. Again, they say it's somewhere between 5 and 40% of your total budget, and we'll try to hone in on that exactly. But again, it's not probably going to be 750, but it also shouldn't be 20. So that's our pitch. Again, hopefully you can briefly look through this and see that there has been a lot of work done on it. And again, I would, I understand, the scrub and going back down to 50,000, but I think if we're going to equalize and normalize this charge for the 60% of people in town who pay a water rate, I think it's a fair equalizing of that account. And Corey, this isn't going to show up in the water department budget because we just look at expenses, but there is a revenue account that is fully aware of this charge and that the money gets put over and applied to the water department.
So how would we see that the different amount is actually being charged back to water sewer as revenue?
Well, as you may or may not know, we don't have all these different bank accounts around. It's basically one town bank account. So when you pay your water and sewer bill, it goes into, it's an enterprise fund, and so it's accounted for as a water fund and a sewer fund. But it's a pot of money, so it's an accounting, item that Corey and his department have. So that would be a revenue stream, the 100, whatever the number we agree on, that goes into the, when the 20,000 currently gets paid for as taxes, that goes into a revenue stream for the water department.
We'd have a revenue line item in the water fund.
It's purely an accounting, switch is what we're trying to do here.
It's not an actual exchange of cash or anything like that, but it serves as revenue to the water fund.
It's in the back alley,
And it becomes, it changes the balance between what the general fund and the water fund owe each other. So that 100,000 changes that equation. It's a constant back and forth due to from who
And
was.
if general fund, meaning all the taxpayers in town, gets a larger portion of the fee, then it would be nice for those of us who also pay the water sewer fee to see an equal reduction in our bills.
That's the point. So there'll be 100,000, well, again, you know, my proposal is that there's $100,000 this year or next year that would be coming into the water fund that currently is only $20,000. So it's a significant, and as many of you know, I worked with the Board of Selectmen a couple of meetings ago, and we just voted, and on January 1st, the water rates are going to go up fairly significantly because of all the federally mandated projects that we're implementing. So there are expenses and a fairly large rise in water department expenses, and this will help offset that a little bit. Tom?
Yeah, I support the way that Bob has articulated it, because I am also concerned about the water and sewer rates, and those, I'm sure there are people, it's a high-profile item that, and to me, in my mind, it's somewhat analogous to some of the thinking that I went through relative to the cost of the sewage treatment plant. And although this was a non-starter at the time, it was my opinion at the time that there should have been a component for the general government budget. There should have been a component of that in the sewage treatment plant, in my opinion, back then. Now, the timing and the mechanics and the politics of that didn't allow that. But I think, and the sewer ratepayers are bearing the brunt of that, you know, of the whatever 55 whatever million bucks that was expended upon that. So, and again, I think there's an analogy there. The numbers are much smaller, but I think the benefit is greater than to the greater town than just to the water and sewer ratepayers.
Yes.
And so that's the analogy that I wanted to draw. Maybe I shouldn't have opened that kettle of fish, but I think there's an analogy to be made there, and that's part of the argument. At least that's part of why I favor the argument that Bob is making.
And just to be clear, Mr. Chair, just in plain language, so the higher this budget number is in this budget, the bigger the offset goes to the water department, and the better the relief for water user payers.
Right. Like I said, it's sort of like EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. They give us criteria for arsenic in drinking water and things like that. And, in that case, we have to pay money to build facilities to meet those, public health levels. AWWA sets criteria for, water, for fire protection. They don't have quite the same clout that EPA does, but what they're recommending is that we actually spend $750,000 to allocate from the general fund to the water sector. We're not going to do that, certainly, in the next probably 10 years. But again, this is just a first attempt to equalize and acknowledge that the water system benefits the entire town, even if there's not a pipe in front of your, or a hydrant in front of your house.
And sorry to interject, but your point that went by pretty quickly, but your point is about the fact that 60% of the taxpayers are on the water system already. So actually it's a wash for, very roughly speaking, for 60% in terms. Now you can argue about the amounts, but in terms of where you budget it, correct, Bob?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just to be clear, so in your recommendation that you are putting forward, or you wanted to put forward, is to move this from 50 to 100.
I will be making a motion to reduce the hydrant maintenance fee in the fire department budget to zero, 55151. I will be making that motion to zero, and then making a motion on page 30, which we talked about on Friday, under miscellaneous. Corey had suggested that a new line under miscellaneous be added for, again, for lack of a better term, hydrant maintenance fee or fire suppression fee, whatever it is. And I would be making a motion for that to be $100,000.
Got it. And I would be seconding that.
Again, we continue to have discussion. We can adjust the number right at this point. The budget has been presented at $50,000, not $100,000, and I think that it should be higher.
Got it.
So we can chew on that for a minute, but I guess for...
Let me just ask the chiefs, is there an actual hydrant maintenance fee that you don't need that?
It's interesting watching and being your assistant fire chief for 15 years. Chief Como fought the fight for years, and some nights it seemed like it was a fight, not fully understanding why that number was there. And I'm thinking back years ago, that number was closer to $40,000, and I think I can picture Bob Eastman and others on the board, and they agreed to cut it to $20,000. Because honestly, there was no description of what it served, the purpose. Now with this last study, it was clear as day why it's there, and that the need is great to balance the need. So, yeah, the fire department has no fight. We don't spend that line. That line it magically reduces throughout the year without any effort of the fire department. So whether it's there on my budget or not, it doesn't matter.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have a question. Is there like a better name for it? Like hydrant availability or
Well, like I said, I suggest a fire system management fee because, again, it goes to help subsidize the previous capital costs that we put in the ground and in our treatment facilities, as well as extra staff that we have to do 1.2 MGD of water production versus if it was just the town and drinking water, it might be significantly less than that.
Yeah.
So all aspects of the water department budget are affected by, pipes in the ground and providing fire service to the whole town.
The easy thing we can all touch and feel are those yellow fire hydrants throughout town. The harder part you can't look at is the fact that, there's a 12-inch water main under Water Street to protect all of the businesses and properties that on the PEA campus, whatever, that may have been able to only be 8 inches if we're just trying to produce drinkable potable water in town. So there's a significant outlay of money every time we do a pipe project because of the sprinkler buildings and the buildings that have fire protection, which is what they're attempting to capture. So.
Very interesting.
Just a quick comment too. I just wanted to point out that the reason we suggested 50,000, again, looking at this budget in total context, we knew we needed to start somewhere. We are looking at just about an 8% increase overall, so that's why that number is what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Well played.
Yeah, Russ and Corey worked, very closely with the consultant, and I was honored to be part of that study committee. And yeah, it's a tough decision. This budget is higher than we're used to, and they thought that this would be you start at 50 and go from there. And it's a very reasonable approach. Very reasonable, but. Me, from the water and sewer side, I think we need to get there a little bit quicker. So I'll start things off by making a motion to reduce the hydrant maintenance fee line item 55151 in the fire department budget to 0.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
And then, so we don't forget to thank Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
I can show up whenever I want now.
That on page 30, under the miscellaneous item, that a new, as yet unnamed fire suppression fee or whatever Corey in his creative mind decides to come up with, I will make a motion to place $100,000 in that line for FY24.
Second.
Oh, okay. Oh, you beat me to it.
And again, I know we've sort of thrown a lot of stuff on you. I've been elbows deep with the town administration on this for 6 months. So if you have questions, certainly feel free to ask. And if you disagree with the motion, I would love to hear
Anna?
that.
Just a minor comment. Amanda suggested renaming it. I'll just point out that Chief Wilkins has been referring in this conversation to fire protection, and that phrase might insert well in lieu of hydrant maintenance.
Yeah, I love that.
Excellent, we can do that.
Laura and I spent about 5 minutes toying with new names, and we gave up and called.
That's what I'm here for.
So we haven't actually christened it yet, I don't believe, so we can.
Mic drop, right, Ellen?
Yeah. As long as we don't have to hire a consultant to come up with a name, I'll get behind it.
Quick question. This is a recommendation. Other communities might already have it named. We're not the only ones.
Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, is there any, ballpark projection, given the forecasted rate increase, what this impact will be and how that would, if you, the difference between 50 and 100, how that affects ratepayers specifically, directly?
Well, what I will tell you is that the consultant recommended a 20% water. We haven't raised rates since 21, right, Russ?
Correct.
2021. Things have been going along pretty well. We've had the drought notwithstanding, we had decent consumption, but we have worked down about 10 million gallons in consumption last year, which translates quite directly to revenue. Right. We're thinking that this year, with obviously no drought, that our revenues will be able to increase. However, again, the consultant suggested a 20% increase. The Water and Sewer Advisory Committee thought that that was a little piling on, and just for a number of other reasons thought that that was too much. We recommended, and the Board of Selectmen agreed, the Select Board agreed with a 15% increase, which translates to around $500,000. So what we're thinking, that by equalizing this, making it, again, fair for the whole town, that's a way to get, that's like 2.5% sort of back towards that, that 20 without actually having to charge people 20. So that was what the, so we're adding in this 100. Again, we tried to keep rates at a lower rate than the consultant suggested by having this be a little higher.
Okay, so the net of that then is if it ended up at 100 and it made it through, that'd be about 2.5% against that 50. Okay.
Right. Okay. And again, hoping that with consumption back to, say, pre-COVID levels and without a drought, that we'll be back doing pretty well to support.
Have we forecasted, obviously, though, that the higher the rate goes, the less the appetite for consumption is, so that drives the desire for consumption down?
That's always the million-dollar question that Russ and I wrestle with every year. is the higher the rates, the more conservation, and the less consumption there is. So that was another reason why we went to 15, is let's sort of see how it goes. Okay. But let's not pile on. Let's not preload the rates for January 1st. Let's see how the year 2024 shakes out, and we'll adjust again in the fall if we have to. The consultant for the 2016 rate study suggested we change rates every year. And Russ and I and the finance department have been able to generally do every other year. That's about right, Ron?
That's
every
correct.
Other year or so?
Yeah, about every other year we've been updating the rates.
Any other
2019, 2021, 2023.
Any other input? Well, I will, again, it's been moved and seconded to have a fire protection fee added to the miscellaneous section on page 30 of $100,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for rolling up your sleeves and getting into this in a very, very rapid manner, and I appreciate everyone's forbearance.
Yeah, those are two big issues in this department. It makes a lot of difference.
Sorry, Bob, before we move on, do you want to vote the bottom line on that miscellaneous now that we have it wrapped?
We do.
General government.
It's going to be difficult,
Go general government.
It's going to be difficult to add up, though. 100,000 plus 4 plus 1 plus 1. I think it's 100,008.
Thankfully, we have Corey.
Want to borrow my pencil, Corey?
I think it's a total of 100,000 for 100.
Oh, 4 is the total.
See, mistakes are made.
I will entertain a motion for the miscellaneous budget item of $100,004.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. So I think.
Back to fire.
What is the, we still have a lot to do.
Back
on
to-
the general budget.
55214 physicals, you see a big drop there, and I assume, Chief, we didn't discuss this, that this is because you're fully staffed, so you're not anticipating pre-employment physicals for new hires. Fingers crossed.
I was just going to do that. Don't jinx me.
Okay, and on to 55230, protective equipment. This is a substantial increase, but as PFAS are being removed from protective gear, the material that's replacing them is more expensive. So safer gear is what we're looking for here.
So is that just what it is, that gear is more expensive, or are we having to do other things for health and safety?
It's small things in the line. I like getting the gear inspected to make sure that it still meets the protection quality of the gear. There's a slight little bit, but the majority of it is the gear itself that they're making to try to
Excuse me.
I would almost say compete, but that's not the right term, meet the standard for PFAS, because as you know, we've talked about that in the air. Our gear, to make it waterproof, has that in it, and we wear it directly against our skin. So all the manufacturers have been working over the last year to 18 months to integrate that out. And the cost of that material is driving gear up by 25% across the board. We used to be able to buy a set of turnout gear for $2,800, $3,000. And we've been blessed with your support and the select board support. We replaced 8 sets of gear a year on a regular rotating schedule for the personnel and a staff officer. That way we don't see spikes going up and down. And with that, we're talking about an $8,000 increase just in the cost of the gear to do that. It's a huge number. So it's not a change in program. We're not buying more gear. Obviously, we're not hiring more people. So this is just maintaining the same thing. It is an inflationary cost.
Corey, what's the year to date on that line? 230?
Got like $200 left.
23,645.
So you would presumably, so that's a little more than half spent. I mean, presumably you've got the end of the year Christmas rush.
I don't think we're talking the same thing.
No.
So I was giving you, so the number I had on our prelim budget was August. I'm in Munis now.
So
we're there's just about 1,000 left on the budget.
Yeah. Actually down to $498. What we typically do, and the manufacturer, we're blessed that Globe Manufacturing is built in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. They are, if not the leading, one of the leading manufacturers of gear in the nation. So we have a great relationship. We actually test drive gear for them, and we do a super job. But they offer us the ability to lock in prices if we commit to a gear purchase in November-ish. So kind of we beat the rush. So often we'll throw a PO together for the very first of the year, and we encumber a ton of this money. But to Corey's end, we had 1,073 earlier, and we posted a couple of small invoices to it. So that account is virtually exhausted at $500 right now.
Okay. Thank you. Judy?
You see another increase in 55282, and I ask, what on earth is driving this? It's just simple inflation, driving up laundry and the building cleaning supplies.
We all go to the grocery store. We all pack a cart at Hannaford's and Shaw's and the market basket. Yeah, and we're the same thing. Somebody, and again, what do we do? Facebook and Jason Schreiber, what do we do? We are a home that has 7 adults in it 24/7 and an additional 7 in it during the business hours that needs to do everything you do at your home. We need to do laundry, we need to clean toilets, we need to wax floors, we need to feed ourselves. We don't feed ourselves with a taxpayer dollar, but all the things that you buy, we buy. And it is all driven up, and we find that it's about a $300 increase in supplies and cleaning and materials. So.
Yeah. Anything else, Judy?
55095, similarly, emergency management equipment, upgrades to computers and other on-scene materials.
Any other questions on general expenses? What would be the new number there, Cory?
329,256. 329,256.
I'd like to move that number.
Okay. Second? That's a question, not a statement.
Second.
Thank you, Liz. Any further discussion? All those in favor of a general expenses budget of $329,256 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And a new total fire department budget.
Yes, 4,247,108. 4,247,108.
And I'd like to move that number.
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Can I ask for a percentage on that?
That would be about 4.9%.
Probably not much different, huh? Okay. Fine.
Or 4.8. Are you going to do shared services and this, or should we do that on our own?
Doing that
Do you
with
want to weigh
police.
in on that?
There's not a lot of change. I would just input that we made a conditional job offer for a new health officer. We anticipate help with HR onboarding in the next couple of weeks. But because of the new rate and pay study that James was dropped on, our previous one, you can't go lower than step 1. So we anticipate the new health officer coming in at step 1. So much of the planned budget that we put together in August is still very appropriate, very applicable. So there's really no change. James was able to negotiate a better contract with a mosquito control vendor, and I think that's reflected in the budget, Cory.
Correct.
About a $5,000 decrease in an annual fee for larvicide in our catch basins and spraying. There's really no, the only thing you might, and I guess I don't speak to this, is the benefit change might have to update on that budget.
So do you want to have, how do you want to do dispatch and
Dispatch would be
health?
part of police, and health is part of fire.
Okay, so let's do health then while Eric and Justin are
So where are we now?
on health, page 19.
Okay. So we're done with 18. Yeah.
Well, we're going to do dispatch it with Stefan.
Okay. Okay.
Because that's under police.
So we do have new health and dental and the like, whenever you're ready.
Yes, that would be great.
So health, fire health, dental, health insurance, 28,803, 28803. Dental, 1,989, 1989. and life 92.
Thank you.
Yeah, the timing can be different.
Okay, so Judy, why don't you walk us through health?
So as the chief was saying, the major change has been with the better mosquito control maintenance contract. Otherwise, all remains pretty much the same.
Just big picture, can someone just remind me what the history of having a full-time health officer is? And is it a statutory requirement? Just 2 bullets about that.
I don't know if it's a statutory requirement. I do know, well, let's just say every town needs to have a Board of Health and health officer. And towns that do not have a position, full or part-time, it typically falls to the select board. And somebody on the select board has to fill that role. So many small towns around New Hampshire, if there's a health problem, the select board or somebody they appoint manages it. Exeter has had a history since I've been in town. We transitioned probably 10 years or better from a part-time health officer who was working right around that 28 to 30 hour a week into a full-time health officer in the days of Ken Birkenbush. And they have had a steady workload. We are what the state of New Hampshire calls a self-inspecting community. The state of New Hampshire provides inspectional services to those small communities that have food service establishments that they don't have a health inspector, health officer. So we have that health officer in town that does all those. Just to pull a plus and a minus with that, obviously you're paying for a health officer, but we're also receiving the revenue that the health officer generates through the inspectional services. It's not a wash, but last year, do you have revenue, Corey? It's usually in the $40,000 to $45,000 a year range for fees and permits and licenses that the food establishments in town pay. And as you can see, the salary alone for the position now is about $70,000. So, and of course, we found it invaluable with COVID. To have that person, and again, James is a unique individual and we'll never be able to hire another James, but his guiding hand and his demeanor through that process, I think, and I don't want to speak for the select board, but I found it refreshing going to work every day and being able to work through that 2 or 3 year period of time. As we emerge, I anticipate the health officer having a key role in the health of the town. The young lady that we interviewed today has a lot of great ideas of not only the boots on the ground doing some inspections, but initiatives that can make this a better town, a safer, healthier town, whether it's mental health, physical health, and initiatives. So she's going to bring a whole breath of.
Oh, so we're getting a new.
We just today we made a conditional.
Your previous one is gone, is what you're saying. Oh,
I'm sorry if you didn't catch it.
I didn't catch it.
James, through all of his good work, it did not go unnoticed what he was doing through COVID. The CDC reached out and offered him a job. They hired 17 new people, and it was very hard to compete to be able to work at home.
The New Hampshire CDC.
This is the feds. This is out of Atlanta. So he is now working for the government. The government. He's now working for the federal side of the house, the CDC.
Okay, thank you.
So we hired a young lady to replace it.
Great.
The health officer also deals with housing complaints as well, and deals with sewer issues. So there's, rodent issues, and enforces our health regulations that we have on our books. So
I was just kind of like picturing a person. I was picturing a person constantly all year long harassing restaurant owners. That's what I was picturing. So, no, I'm just kidding.
James was lovely to work with.
Okay. Thank you. So new general expenses total, Corey?
1 second here, Patrick, Bob.
I guess there wouldn't be a new general expense. It'd be the total.
Yep, total.
So the new total.
Health total, 160,122, 160,122.
I'll entertain a motion for that amount.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
They do a consolidated budget, it's all done. So
Mr. Chair, if I could go back and answer Tom's question, which I didn't have at the ready. So fire went from 4.9 to 3.8%.
I thought it was a little bit more substantial, and that's nice. I mean,
With
to
the
see that.
with the 50,000 moved.
Yeah, no, I understand. Nice.
Okay, so two items before we transition over to the police department. One is,
Thank you, Chief.
as Eric so artfully articulated, he and I have gotten gray together for almost 15 years on this committee.
Thank you, Chief.
And it's always been a pleasure, and I would like to express our appreciation for working with you over the past number of years, and wish you well in your retirement, should that come to fruition.
I can't think of a better town to work for. You guys have been awesome, and Russ, I've touted for years, I was Russ's first full-time hire.
Well, I would like to...
It's all Russ's fault, yeah.
2005. Good one.
And just while we're in the lull, so because after this we'll be talking about CIP for a bit, and I won't forget, this is some information. We talked on Friday about some new welfare potential positions, which we'll be talking about with Chris Suter and her group. So if you could look at these over the next couple of weeks and see how it might fit into our budget thinking. Information only at this point. So Stefan, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Deputy Chief McCain apologizes for not being here. He's also the commander on the regional SWAT team, and this is their yearly week-long training up in the White Mountains.
Okay.
That's nice. Judy?
What a great week to have training in the White Mountains.
Some introductory remarks about the police department's budget. The Exeter Police Department is dedicated to a community policing model. All decisions and budget priorities flow from this model. The goal of this budget is to have a force that is well-trained and resourced to meet the demands of the 21st century policing. The department is forward-thinking in its approach to problem-solving, as exemplified by its being the only PD in the state of New Hampshire to be a one-mind campaign department. Mental health calls are a daily event. Through its one-mind commitment, officers have undergone specialized education and training to respond to calls in a sensitive and effective manner. The department is at the end of the first phase of accreditation, which will allow increased credibility in court presentations and also lower the town's Primex insurance premium. Another positive initiative is the purchase of vehicle cameras last year to augment the body cameras worn by officers in the field. These cameras provide both transparency and enhanced effectiveness. A new cloud-based system to track field training records for new hires is also budgeted. This system provides for enhanced trainer and supervisor workflow and communication. Contracts for these and other computer services and equipment show increases per contractual agreements. The department ended its contract for external prosecutor services and has hired an in-house part-time position. This is Chief Mulholland, Detective Mulholland, for an overall savings of over $45,000. To better reflect payroll codes and to improve tracking, the police department worked in coordination with the finance department to review and adjust several overtime items, especially in dispatch. Although the department is presently fully staffed, other than the one position in dispatch, recruitment and retention of officers continues to be an area of concern. I should say that also applies to the fire department. At present, the high morale, commitment to professionalism, and the community policing model are the department's best marketing and retention tools. When we get to the CIP, you'll see that the building is not one of its best tools for marketing.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Okay, why don't we start off with benefit adjustments, Corey?
Sure. Line 52100, health insurance. New number, 492,486. 492,486. Dental, 40,584. 40584. Life insurance, 1,515. 1515. Long-term disability, 959.
Great. Judy?
Okay. As with the fire department, the police department has salary wage incentive to get specialized training for officers who then will go on to train others. The ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act bonuses aren't in the budget because they're ARPA funds. There was a 51130 personal replacement. I just didn't know what Fitness Day was, and we discovered that Fitness Day is a day off for officers meeting and fitness requirements at a very high level, and covers overtime for this. So police officers have a fitness requirement, and this is a benefit for them.
What line item is that, Judy?
51130, 5 down from the top.
Okay.
Is that something that we came up with, or is that part of the
It's
CBA?
historical. It's historical. It's been part of the department's infrastructure for a long time.
Okay.
So
So
we're
it's just-
quantifying it here.
Okay. So is what, just part of salaries or part of other types of OT or in the past?
So I think as Judy had alluded to up at the top, Chief and Laura spent a fair amount of time, and then we discussed it in a separate meeting, just getting the OT numbers right based on historical and putting some math and some data behind it. So some of these numbers are going to look elevated based on the bucket they're now sitting in. So it's better spread between all of the OT lines.
Okay.
So if you were to add them, I'm just adding up all the OTs right in this section, and I come to a decrease of 22 grand year over year. So, we're working pretty hard to try to get them somewhat accurate.
Yeah, it's a lot like Dr. Zwan was mentioning with the fire department, just making sure we can allocate each specific line item. And I'll reiterate that Corey and Laura were amazing with helping us with this, looking at averages and what officers usually take versus what shifts we need to fill. We don't have to fill everybody that takes a personal day. So all those things came into worksheets, and they did a great job.
Todd, did you have a question?
Maybe we're still coming to it. I'll take it on face value. This exchanging a detective to a prosecutor and how that's reflected in this flow sheet. But of course, I see salaries and wages full time, and I'm wondering, is that that's factored into that? I assume, correct?
Yes. So going back several years, we used to contract with the Rockingham County Attorney's Office for right around $90,000 a year. And that was for 4 days. We would have an attorney, and one day she would go to Hampton Falls for 20%. That person left. Rockingham County, just like everyone else, has trouble filling spots, and they no longer offer that service to smaller communities.
Okay.
So we looked in-house to see who could do this, and Patrick Mulholland, who's been a detective forever and a great detective, actually had interest in it as well. So still as a detective, we took him and gave him prosecutorial duties. And that's what he had been doing for the last several years now.
So did you lose him as a detective?
We did, just recently when he retired. So when he retired, he approached the town and myself, is there an ability to come back and stay part-time and be a prosecutor?
Okay, I get it now.
And we worked that out. So there's an open detective spot.
You're going to hire another detective to replace him, and he's replacing the contracted prosecutor.
Right.
Okay, finally. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Thank you for clarifying.
So you'll see that's item 512, what am I thinking? 00, and that's connected to below 55047, excuse me, 55057, prosecutor services.
Yeah.
So those two go hand in hand.
Yep.
With an overall savings of about 45,000.
Great.
People usually ask about holiday pay, 51420, where we are with that. The holiday paychecks go out the first pay period in November, so we haven't spent that item yet. $51425, another incentive. This is an incentive to get firearms instruction so that officers will train others.
Is that a train-the-trainer kind of thing?
So those are specific firearms instructors that need to keep certification. And like the other incentives for the use of force, baton, OC, super important that we recognize that if an officer that they train has any kind of legal issue with the use of force, that person that instructed them is on the hook. So in order to get people to want to do that, we offer a little bit of an incentive through the town, through CBA.
What's that?
I'd just like to add that Russ and Nico and Nancy and myself got to watch a simulation of the police department in which these trainers basically walked us through the process, and it was amazing how articulate they were, how they coached, how they, I wish everybody could have seen it. It was amazing. These trainers really were just amazing. So just to speak to that, it was really fascinating.
So I see where we had spent money in that in '22. Was this just '23 was a transition period? We sort of acknowledged in '22 what was something we needed to adjust that or whatever. This is the firearm incentive and field training.
So we had 2,500 spent in 2022. Do you not see that on yours?
We do.
I do.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
But we didn't spend anything in '23.
You know what, there's a timing that'll come out at the end of the year or towards.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, Judy?
I'm looking for 51440 training coverage. And I'm not finding it.
There it is. It's at the bottom, salary.
Under 55, 51455, it's out of order.
Okay. There are increased state requirements, so this is the overtime to cover that additional required training.
So this is one of your unfunded state mandates that is increasing police training needed to keep your certification, which is a good thing. The unfunded part's not. But this year it's going from 10 to 16 hours each officer. And that's in addition to all of the other mandates on firearms, use of force, mental health, CPR. So this, every time an officer goes to training, we have to cover the shift.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are further down, nearly done with salaries total, I think, but we passed over 51435, Comfort Dog OT, and I'm going to, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, use that as my moment to, as I did earlier with community relations, express my discomfort. Actually, that's pretty funny considering we're talking about a comfort dog. Regarding this line item, but someone maybe can explain to me that particular line item. Relative to the OT, I will say I'm very pleased to see it broken out for the reasons I talked about with the fire department. So I'm all for that. So I'm guessing there's some reason, good reason, why there's a line item for comfort dog OT. But I'll use that also as a transition to note that further on down the line, next page, we're going to talk about comfort dog expenses. So maybe we can talk about that then. But I'm not a dog person myself. I'm all for comfort. I'm not for dogs. But that's just a personal opinion. And I totally understand, I think, the initiative, and I know I'm sounding like a Grinch here, but last year I was under the impression that this was, largely a self-funded thing, and now I'm seeing at least two budget lines for this dog. And I had a bunny once, and that bunny, but that bunny, I spent $700 trying to revive that bunny, and per pound, that was just awful. So I've been cured of having a pet, so at some point, someone's going to need to explain to me these budget items and whether or not they're going to be recurring. Thank you.
I can do that right now. So to date, the UFO patches themselves have raised $9,510 for the comfort dog. You won't see that anywhere in there. The comfort dog overtime is for the handler of the dog for feeding and care after hours. She gets 2.5 hours a week overtime to do that. And you'll find that's case law for any canine handler for a police department. There's Garcia law that you have to pay them a certain amount of overtime for care, whatnot, the dog off duty.
Yeah, I get it.
So we agree with 2.5 hours a week. We all thought that was fair. So if you just take in what we raised so far just on patches, 9,510, we still have more patches. We still receive donations from different entities in town.
Okay.
Both will be funded for. They're just in here to be placeholder.
Okay, so I didn't realize there was a revenue side of this. Maybe I missed that memo, but that's good. No, seriously, that's great.
She earns her keep, this dog.
She does.
Yeah.
And you're happy with this program?
Yes, definitely.
So you pro comfort dog now?
No. There's, but I didn't know there was a revenue to offset it. That's my point.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, animals get more expensive over time. I mean, there are going to be expenses associated with this thing.
That's not funny.
Just like cars.
So that's my point. And it's, these things, like anything, not just a dog. They start as a free thing or as a revenue neutral thing, and then they become an expense. So I'm just throwing that out there for consideration. I'm all for comfort. I'm less for dogs, but just kind of want to throw that.
Not really our jurisdiction is.
Let's go back to the purpose of this dog. Maple is not a mascot. Maple has work to do. She is an outgrowth of the community policing model, and the question of how do you reach out to a community and how do you reach out to those younger populations especially. And that's where the idea for Maple came from. It's part of the community policing effort.
Chief, did
The response from, in addition to the department, the response from the community has been?
Yes, and that's where I was coming from. That's why I'm so happy about it, is the community response behind that, from schools, from victims, the whole gamut.
I know I'm sort of slightly jocular about it, and I know I'm sounding grinchy, but we're the budget committee, and we're looking for places to axe money if we can, etc. But I will say, to wrap it up, I get my news in the morning from Morning Edition on public radio, and by gosh, they had a story just a couple of days ago about the numbers of communities that now have such a dog, and it's on the order of like 3,000 communities across the country. So
If I could
I'm
just add
Melissa.
that we, like you asked for the note on the EMS funding, we can certainly next year put a note in the line
that's a great
item that
idea.
there's an
Really good.
offsetting
Great idea.
revenue, just so that we avoid
Perfect.
that. I would also like to say that the department works very heavily with the youth in our community, and there's very traumatic situations that in order to bring some comfort or stress release to the youth so that they can have a discussion with the officers or detectives or anybody, it is a really fantastic tool. And they have done a fantastic job fundraising and coming up with ways in which it's not on the tax dollar to provide that benefit. And don't get me wrong, seniors, adults, those of us that like dogs, it works. But for the kids especially, it is a fantastic tool to break down any barrier so that they're willing to chat and talk and that kind of thing.
Thanks. Sorry to take up so much time on it, but I think it's a worthy discussion.
I just keep saying
We're
about
still
cost
under
per
2
pound.
hours. So yeah, Judy,
Item
It
number
looks like some computer and software items.
55001, accreditation. This was an item that I had questioned the chief on when we were starting out because it's not a cheap program, getting accreditation. And they're now at toward the end of the first phase. Chief, could you just explain the value of accreditation, for example, when you go to court and so forth?
Yes, of course. So, unlike the fire service, there are no national standards for policing, right? And that's a big problem. There are state standards to a great degree as well. So what accreditation does is it helps you build your policies and procedures to meet the best practices of the whole country, of what is best practices in mental health, best practices in evidence handling, the whole everything. They break down everything for you. We always had, good general orders and good policies and procedures, but these are making them better. Really nitpicking them to make sure that they're up to date, current best practices and everything else. So the first phase is actually Lieutenant Bolduc going through each and every of our general orders, which there's hundreds of them. Inside those general orders, there's different bullet points that have to be met. Just making an arrest, for instance, handcuffing someone, they need to be checked for tightness and double locked, and there's 2 proofs right there just for handcuffing. And then when you get into bigger things, there's just so many proofs on top of that. Maintaining certifications, making sure you have lesson plans when you're teaching use of force, that who reviews all those things. Internal investigations. What do you have for citizen complaints? Do you investigate every citizen complaint? Can you investigate anonymous complaints? Do you take them by phone? So it just outlines everything, makes you a better police department, better police officers, better town for having those better police officers. And so after this phase, once he goes through all those and nitpicks all the little areas, we'll have what's called a mock assessment, and a group will come out, fly out here, and kind of do a test run of our policies and procedures. And not only do we have policies and procedures, but interview our folks. Do they know them? Because anyone can copy and paste someone else's policy and procedure and say they're accredited. They actually will test everybody verbally, hey, what do you do in this instance? And take notes and see if they they follow them as well. We have to prove that we're following them by showing reports, by showing certifications, by showing whatever it is. And then, like Dr. Rowan mentioned, at the end, when we do finally reach accreditation, which there aren't many in the state that have CALIA accreditation, there'll be a small percentage reduced from the town for liability, because it tells you your officers are trained in doing the things right. They're not getting into a pursuit with somebody on a motorcycle, because we have policy that says you can't. Some agencies don't. So that's the difference. There's a lot of police departments in the state, and we're not all doing the same exact things. But accreditation will help us. We'll do the same exact thing as another accredited agency. Hope that kind of clarifies it.
So how many phases are there to accreditation, and do you have any idea how much it'll help with our insurance rates? I know you said a small amount, but.
It's a small amount, but it's
Something.
good. I think it's 0.2%.
Yeah.
Overall. So we are looking at phases to be in the third phase and be complete end of 24, beginning of 25. That's what we're shooting for. And then it's a continuing process, so.
Just like
I think
schools and everything.
This goes to the heart of professionalism in the department. Also, when you go to court, if you don't have all these policies and procedures, depending on the case, if things aren't documented, they don't exist as far as lawyers are concerned. So this is helpful in your credibility overall. But I think it also improves the level of professionalism and the morale. People understand the expectations and what they're supposed to be doing.
I think if the town ends up with an accredited department, which we expect to have coming out of this, I think we can hold ourselves high as a community and say that we have one of the few accredited departments in the state. And it's an intense procedure, as the chief alluded to, and it's something that's definitely gives us a leg up in terms of just the perspective of others on the town of Exeter and how we operate as a community. So I think it's well worth doing.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is just a great initiative, so hats off to you. And I'm just going to skip ahead and say I also strongly support community relations in your department. No disrespect to fire, but we started this conversation 2 years ago. And let's remember, 2-3 years ago, we had George Floyd and we had Black Lives Matter and those kinds of things. And this is where it actually does relate. And sometimes really bad and sad things happen that involve the police. And so the more training and the more accredited you are, the less likely it is that something like that happens. So hats off to you for doing that. And that's why I did support community relations then and still do for the police department. And that's partly in response to Amanda as well, relative to the questions about which departments and why, et cetera. So at least from where I was coming from 2 years ago when the initiative first came around, for that, it was in the context of some, pretty significant events that were going on back then. So, hats off to the department.
There you go. Thank you.
And again, as we said at the beginning, most of the decisions flow from the community policing model. It's a powerful concept. 55047 computer maintenance service contract. If you added up all of the items listed in our book, as I did, you come up with a figure different from what is in the proposed budget. However, the chief has pointed out, those are old numbers. The correct number actually is reflected in the 2024 request, so we're not going to change that. And may we jump down to 55106, equipment purchase. The equipment purchase is sort of a large catch-all of all kinds of things that are purchased. But this item also includes the increase for the cruiser cameras, which was at $4,654.38 on an annual contract. This aids in transparency and effectiveness. It supplements the body cameras. Again, the department got out ahead of public opinion, pressure, demands, led the conversation, and resulting in these purchases that they have communicated well within the department. So the reasons for this aren't a matter of discord within the department, and actually, you've seen that it's helpful to officers, is that correct?
Yes, they love the body cameras. We've had several complaints come in, and we quickly review the body cam footage, and the complaint is quickly exonerated. Officer was not rude or did not do what the person said they did. The cruiser cameras, we found that there was that missing piece of going in emergency somewhere, or even just doing field sobriety on somebody. When the cruiser lights come on, the camera comes on, but all you saw was a steering wheel. So we went for the cruiser cameras for the front, but there's also a dome light cruiser camera that watches the prisoner, because sometimes a prisoner might bang their head off the cage and then say that the police officer did that to them. This catches everything. Sometimes they might take something that wasn't found in their waistband and try to hide it in the seat. This cruiser camera will catch everything, and it also catches spontaneous utterances that they might say on the way to jail or whatnot about a case. And they're warned that everything's video and audio recorded as well. So a lot of cleaning up some liability issues there, as well as just getting just better transparency. That's great.
Awesome. Looks like you guys had some changes in the software agreement line. You know, we can button up the police budget, at least according to your report.
Yes, are we ready to move down to?
I think we are.
Okay. Yes, this was another addition situation, and I propose we change that number to $27,314. Or Corey, I don't know if you want to.
That's correct, yeah.
Sorry, line again?
I'd move that number.
55270 software agreement.
Yeah.
Oh,
We've had some revised contract, looks like revised contract numbers. So that is a motion, 27,314.
Second.
Thank you, Liz. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so any other comments or questions on general expenses for the police department? Seeing none, what would be the total general expenses number, Corey?
288,249. 288,249.
I'd like to move that number.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Before we go on to dispatch, I just want to say that there are vehicles, however, they're not in the budget due to donated funds. There is a motorcycle lease and also 2 cruisers. Tim was concerned that we hired new officers and he didn't have any cruisers for them, but Chief reassured us that was not the case.
I thought you were going to tell us that Tim donated a couple of cruisers.
We took it out of the Maple Fund, actually.
So a lot of patches.
A lot of patches.
Yeah, so Bob, on the cruisers, just to illuminate on that a little bit, we are in the midst of doing an analysis right now on some excess construction proceeds that we have that are left over in the town's coffers. And basically, the plan for that is to create a warrant article to go to the voters and repurpose those proceeds because they don't have any purpose anymore, and repurpose those and actually use those to buy cruisers.
Oh.
So that's something that Corey and his team dug in on, and thank you to Corey and his group because they found that money that was lying around for quite a few years.
Wow.
Unused.
Well done.
So in addition to walking to work, you get to find all these.
Like the laundry at my house.
It's invaluable.
I'm trying to think about it on the way in.
Where's the money? Where's the money?
So the new police department budget, Corey?
Police total, 3,923,944. 3923 944.
I'd like to move that number.
Seconded.
Further discussion on the police budget of $3,923,944. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And we'll
On
move
to dispatch.
Dispatch on page 18, excuse me.
We have some health numbers. You will see some disparities in overtime, and that's what I referred to earlier. The chief and Corey went over these overtime figures, so the adjustments are those to more accurately reflect what is going on in these items. And we have some health and
Yeah, so, let's update the health numbers.
Dispatch health, 84,400, 84400. Dental, 6,536, 6536. Life insurance, 230.
Thank you.
I apologize, Corey. Can you repeat the health insurance number again, please?
Yes, 84400.
Thank you.
So the subcommittee did not have any changes to the dispatch numbers. Does anybody have any questions? Amanda?
I just had a question going back to the beginning with the EMS thing. So is one of these, are there really 6 dispatchers?
Oh, great question.
Or are there really 5? And one is, because one was like covered by that.
EMS fund, right?
Yeah, one is covered by the EMS fund, so there's a 6th.
There is
So
a
there's
6th.
6.
Yeah.
Ah,
good catch, Amanda.
thank you. Maybe a note?
Yeah, note. Yeah, can we get a note on that one?
We can put a note in, yes. That was identified in the budget narrative as well, just as a heads up.
Amanda just earned her rookie bonus.
I know.
Extra cookie. Right
Yeah.
Cookie for a rookie. So seeing no comments or questions about the dispatch total, Corey, what's the new number? Dispatch?
Yep. I'm feverishly writing poorly and trying to get your numbers as well. Dispatch. Total, 456,327. 456,327.
I'd like to move that number.
Second.
Further discussion? Although, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And the total public safety shared services?
$616,449. 616,449.
So even though that's an additive number, we'll still vote on it for propriety. Second to Judy's motion.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you.
Oh,
That is the budget.
wow.
Do you want to have a brief?
Sure.
No more than 17 minutes? No more than 17 minutes discussion about the CIP?
Excellent.
Good. Color brochures, too.
Yeah. So as we discussed on Friday with the federal government, we don't actually in-depth review the CIP, but I wanted to get it on everyone's radar. There are some handouts that have been distributed that give some really nice descriptions of the aspects of the public safety complex and the proposed public safety complex. We will have a This, just for the summary, obviously, this was voted down narrowly last year. A majority voted for it, but we did not get the super majority vote, which was required, the 60%. It has been put back on the ballot. Unfortunately, with these construction times, the added cost is about $1 million purely in additional costs related to construction. There have been no additions to the facility. In fact, there have been some fine tuning of some of the spaces and all that. But Judy, why don't you go over a summary of your conversations with the chiefs and an intro to getting together in November to talk about.
Our conclusion is the subcommittee recommends approval of the police station fire substation project. Given the failure of the project at the polls last year and the increased price, we recommend a vigorous campaign of print and social media to broadcast the need for this important project. You have two multi-page handouts, one that you got via email that detail the police department and fire department needs for the new police station fire substation. Tim very nicely sort of reorganized Chief Pullen's detailed list of fire department problems and organized them into three categories: space issues, structural issues, and safety issues. And that's your email material, Exeter, New Hampshire Safety Complex Issues. Chief Wilking tonight has brought us his needs assessment for a new police station, fire substation, and that is very detailed with pictures. And there's also an accompanying flyer from last year's campaign to pass the project that shows some very succinct bullet points. I hope that you'll get a chance to read these handouts and in preparation for our final CIP discussion on November 16th. Both papers draw our attention to the growth of Exeter's population. In 1978, the population was 11,024, and the present census, 2021, was 16,114. The number of public safety employees has grown from 31 police and 13 fire in 1978 to 36 police and 34 fire today. For communicating the need for this complex project, I attempted to condense Chief Pullen's and Tim's work even further to make it more reader friendly. And if I could have that slide, we have the case for a new police station. Am I in your way? I probably am. This is brief.
Somebody, is there a PowerPoint person?
Is it in the system?
To wake someone up.
Pardon?
Is it in the system?
I believe.
While we're waiting for that, I would really advise everyone to read these documents, because depending on who you talk to, there were two things at play last year. One was the weather that severely impacted the turnout. But the second was that there appears to be a number of folks who really just didn't resonate as to what the need was for a new police station in particular, which is really what we're talking about, with additional space for the fire department to have the ability to fight fires on an expanded northwest and western Exeter, and to avoid train tracks and delays, critical delays like that. So again, we would expect to have a really detailed discussion in a few weeks. And as has been alluded to here, the chiefs and the town staff really can't electioneer and you really pursue this in an aggressive articulate manner. So it's really going to come down to folks like us and talking to people that you know, that if there are issues and concerns, we're going to have to be the ones to take this forward. So just
Can I dovetail on that? Can I dovetail on that for just a second while they're doing their technology thing? I'm just going to call it out. I think the Exeter newsletter does not help us last year, and I'm really, really upset about that. And I don't know how we can address that. And I don't know what kind of line of communication the town and again, we talk about electioneering and this, that, and the other thing. So I don't know how that plays into it. I don't know what kind of line of communication the chiefs have or the town manager has with Exeter newsletter. But wow, they can do a better job. That's all I have to say about it. And it would be really lovely if there was some good reporting and maybe even an editorial from whatever these people do over there in these newspapers, favoring or at least highlighting the need for what I think most of us agree is needed. Enough said.
I can speak to that a little bit. The newsletter beat us to it, so we apologize. We've actually been working quite diligently. We are not allowed to electioneer, but we are allowed to educate and inform. So we are actually in the middle of putting together an educational video to inform about the process, the needs, all of that. And that will be followed up potentially with, like you said, either communication with Seacoast Online, the newsletter, or an editorial that may come from the select board or something along that line. I don't know if anybody saw, there was some information in the newsletter about the siphon project when there was misinformation, however it got there, and a sort of a correction article. So we're sort of in the process right now, and I think the goal is in the next week or so to have that squared away.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Whatever we can do within the bounds of propriety would be great.
Be careful. Okay, we're coming into focus here. As we said, the police and fire departments have outgrown their 1978 public safety complex, and they just try to condense. When you read the materials, you'll see there's a lot of specifics, and to make it more reader-friendly, try to condense it. So the police problems, there's inadequate workspace, and under that you see overcrowded workstations and hallways, no space for confidential interviews, think about that, no training or meeting space, not enough space for equipment to be stored, cleaned, or charged. Booking room is cramped with necessary technology for fingerprinting, etc. Inadequate toilet facilities. Remember, we have both male and female officers, no public restroom. And liability due to lack of safety and security. The evidence room is maxed out. And this has implications for proper storage of materials that will go to trial. Records stored in cells and unsecured storage shed. There's no victim witness privacy. That's a big problem. The IT server for all of the town's computer servers and equipment lacks fire suppression, and the roof leaks.
And this is in a building that holds the fire department.
The parking lot is unsecured. There have been officers who've been threatened, and citizens have gone into the parking area and filmed vehicle and building interiors. The passage of prisoners through spaces cramped with workstations, tools, and gun cleaning. The lobby is not secured, and nor is the building ADA compliant. The major fire department problem is the slow response times to areas northwest of the railroad tracks And then I've put in bold, no new fire department or police department staff required, no major renovations to current building to accommodate the fire department. The new building will be energy efficient and net zero ready. The new building will solve the above needs for space, safety, and security. And I'd like to just read a summary from Chief Wilkins. It's a beautiful 10-page needs assessment. He states, the benefits of constructing the fire substation on Continental Drive provide immediate relief for the staff and apparatus overcrowding at the current Court Street station. It provides for firefighters to work and train efficiently, provides space for emergency response apparatus and equipment to be properly stored inside and safely moved within the building. It provides immediate resources on both sides of the railroad tracks. It immediately provides quicker and safer response times to the north and western portions of town. It provides time to pause and look carefully at how to use the current public safety building. And regarding the last point, the 2023 facility study reveals the soundness of the current Court Street facility. As a result, only minor changes to the building are anticipated in the near future. That's it in 2 nutshells.
5 minutes to spare. Thank you.
Discussion then. We have time for discussion.
Does anybody have, after just looking through this and our brief discussion on Friday, anybody have anything? Russ, I think, astutely asked last week for input from this committee on what some of the hot points were, and to my the pleasure, everybody on the committee answered with something that they had heard or that they would like to see part of this. So I think that was an excellent discussion. Thank you, Russ, for facilitating that. And again, I would take the documents that the chiefs have put together and that Judy and Tim have distilled into a readable format for us. And again, QC these and come on the 16th, I'm sorry, at the CIP night, prepared to really parse this up.
This little thing is just an attempt to try to condense, as you say, the material to get something that is more user-friendly. I hope that there'll be some individual committee group that'll, take this and do a better job of what goes out to the public.
Amanda?
So I may have missed this, but so originally there was a $16 million project and a $6 million project, and that is now not needed at all? The $6 million project?
Oh, right, yeah.
That's no longer needed?
That's right.
Because, why?
Because the Court Street building, the Facilities Committee made an assessment of it structurally, and it's found to be structurally sound. So the accommodation to the fire department going forward would be a matter of moving some walls, that sort of thing. Lesser monies would be needed to do that kind of thing.
So that whole renovation is now just down to?
What's on hold, I guess, is really.
On hold, yeah.
Well, this says that there's no major renovations needed.
No major renovations.
Right.
Like
the $6 million project.
Right.
Right, structural or that sort of thing. So we're sort of going to wait and let them habitate that, at least the strategy is to let them habitate that facility for a few years and sort of see what they can do on their own. I mean, obviously they're gaining, 6,000 square feet
from the police.
So.
Yeah, but there was a whole separate project to renovate.
So that is somewhat on hold.
So it's on hold, but it's not.
Well, it's not going to be $6 million, but we don't know what it is. But we're not scoping that out because we don't know. You can't scope out a maybe. So we're not pursuing anything right now because we don't know what it might be.
But I guess maybe the follow-up to Amanda is I think voters are pretty wise, and on the one hand Chief Bolton's report talks about the difficulty of getting some of the vehicles in the bays and things like that. And I know we're going to move some apparatus up the road with this, but I think, really, if we have the second go-around, this opportunity to put this in the warrant and have a go at it, I think being as transparent up front with voters as possible and putting some language in there that really discusses that and projects what they're going to, because at some point we're going to come before voters and ask for yet another harvest of money to fix or build something.
Exactly.
And I don't want to, find ourselves moving forward with something that says, yeah, don't worry, we don't really need any renovation, stuff like that. It's not completely above board, and I think we owe it to everybody to be as transparent as possible. We've done a fine job of growing a lot of elements of our community, and certainly the need exists. So great, we should be able to speak with that with our chin and eyes held high, and we have to finish the sentence, and we have to say, look, the fire department's going to have this need coming down the road. The good news is, Mr. Voter, you don't have to worry about that this go round, but it's coming, and we're going to define that. I just think we owe it to everybody to be transparent. As possible.
Last time around, there were discussions of 3 options. One was renovation, one was renovation and addition, and the third was raise and reconstruct. I'm reading from your, and from the facilities report, it looks like we can eliminate the second 2 and just go with simple renovation, not major construction.
Well, nobody's come out and said that yet.
Well, then, yeah, exactly. I think that should be part of the discussion if that gets codified and some sort of document, and at least it's part of the package that people can maybe breathe a sigh of relief when they're voting, and they go, well, okay, facility committee went through this is what we have to look forward to, a minor renovation coming up. Otherwise, the whispers are going to happen, and you're going to lose that critical percentage you need to get over the finish line.
Good point. So that needs to be an element included.
In the discussion, in the presentations.
Excellent, thanks, Chris.
Good point.
Yeah, what we can do is revise this. There are a couple other things that we'll talk about, but yeah, that's good input. Any other things that people would like to add that we should be mulling over for the next few weeks? Anna?
Just a point of messaging on the fire department has one bullet point, slow response times. We know fire includes EMS, but everyone who reads this might not occur to them that this is to address an overdose or a heart attack or breathing. It's not just a fire. So I think it's important to articulate that.
And you just reminded me of something, and it may be in there because I haven't parsed this document yet. It's been talked about before, proximity to the high school. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that bullet is on there, but it ought to be, right. Both for police and fire, really, and particularly for police, sadly.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you to the 2 chiefs and Justin. It looks like he actually went to work.
He's a young man.
Yeah, he's a young man. But I appreciate your time.
Got plans going out.
And going through, there are a lot of demands on your departments, and appreciate you bearing with us as we get up to speed. Our next meeting is next Wednesday, a week from today, November 1st, and this will be the Public Works General budget, snow removal and solid waste and highways and streets and the like. Amanda, Andrew, and myself are on that subcommittee, so we'll be presenting budgets. Hopefully will be to you, or our subcommittee report on Monday, and the meeting will be at 6:30 for the full committee next Wednesday. Any other closing comments or questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? And we'll adjourn until next Wednesday at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.